So there are a couple of problems we have that we've been meaning to fix. When I sign out, and I'm back on localhost now, my notes are not actually cleared from state, even though they're supposed to be scoped to my user. So that should probably happen. So you might think we could just say, in addition to setting UID back to null, we just set notes back to empty. But this is being synced with Firebase. So it's going to see that we set state back to empty and be like, oh, it doesn't have any of the notes that I know about up here in the cloud. I should push them all back down to it. Because we never stopped syncing state to this user, whatever the state UID was when we called sync state. So we've got to actually stop syncing when we sign out. So that was in rebase, right? So sync state, what else we have? Bind to state, listen to, fetch, post, push, update, remove binding, removes the listeners to Firebase when your component unmounts. Okay. That sounds like what we want to do. When your component unmounts. So if you did it inside component did mount, you ought to do this in component will unmount, but we didn't do it there. We did it when we finished logging in, right? And we want to do this when we log out. So we need to call base.remove binding, and then we need a reference to this sync state. So we can save it just like this. We can save it as a property of our object, our component. So this.ref equals base.syncState. And then in onStateChanged, when we sign out, actually this might be better since this is actually related to Firebase. We could do it in the actual sign out method. So we call auth.signout. And then we call our little arrow function here. And we'll call base.remove binding this.ref, the reference to sync state. So we'll call auth.signout. When that finishes, we know, since it returned a promise, that we can pass a function to then, and it'll get called. So it does make it a little clearer here what the callback actually does. If it were just a callback, we'd have to read the documentation for that function to know that it is something that runs when it finishes. But if it's a promise, then this is familiar syntax. So we sign out, and then we do whatever this is. Does it work? I don't know. We still didn't clear it out. So let's refresh. Sign in. Notes is an empty object right now. Reauthorization required. Fine. Okay, now our notes have notes in them. I hit sign out. And, the notes are still there, but maybe it stopped syncing. Let's try going to our data. Make sure you're looking at the version that's scoped. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this unscoped copy of data. So it's the stuff that's scoped under this UID. I'm going to add another note up here. Note 2, value is an object. Make sure it has an ID of note 2 and a title of shouldn't be synced yet. Add. Look at my state.notes, and it did not sync it yet. I have to log in to sync it. Cool. So I wonder if this is asynchronous. It doesn't say so. There's no return value, and it only takes one argument. So I'm guessing it's synchronous. So just right after that happens, I should be able to say this dot set state notes empty. Since we've removed the binding, it shouldn't put the other notes back in. Okay, let's try. Sign in. I have notes. And now I have the one that I added. If I hit sign out, now notes is back to being empty. And it's not syncing. And if I sign back in, then it is. So we're not going to accidentally expose these notes when we're signed out. Our component state is going to go back to its initial state. All right.